This course is powered by Cybrary for Teams. Security leaders encounter new workforce challenges daily. Cybrary for Teams helps organizations build a cybersecurity-enabled workforce to tackle new challenges, handle security incidents, and prevent data breaches. If you'd like to learn more and see how other security leaders like yourself are utilizing Cybrary for Teams, you can schedule a free demo at the link below or search Teams in the navigation bar.
All right, everybody. So welcome. I still see some people popping in, so I'll just, I think we're getting pretty close. There's like that popcorn algorithm, right? When you watch the attendees joining, and then when you see the numbers starting to slow down in terms of change, then you get started. But so today we're going to talk about virtual work. If we were not going through coronavirus, I would still have this section. We are going to talk a little bit about the pandemic only because it's impossible not to in the context of virtual work. But recognize that virtualization and more modern means for managing day-to-day work activities, this was happening independent of the health challenge that we're going through as a globe. We all know that. But sort of like an accordion would have taken, 3, 4, 5, 6 years to happen. Happened in about 3, 4, 5, 6 days, right? It all happened very quickly, certainly in the Northeast in the United States. I know a lot of you are tuning in from all around the world, but where I live, I work in New York City. We very quickly went from physical to virtual mode. And thank goodness the infrastructure was there. There's a number that always sticks in my mind when I hear remote access, virtual work, telework. It's the number 17. Let me tell you why. So when I see remote access, my brain does that weird word association. I see 17 because I remember being in a meeting. I come from telecom, where this was a while ago, where the discussion had been made that at least a part of my team was running remote access, that we'd been asked to see if we could support 17% of our company working remote. And I remember people shifting around and going, 17%, because someone had done a study and said that, if there was a big enough snowstorm or a big enough event or something, I doubt it was pandemic, it was probably more snowstorm, then it's possible that, my goodness, 17% of the company would have to work from home. I remember driving home thinking, it's never going to be able to do that, because that meant, 17% of a big number, and you just hadn't had that problem. My kids were telling me recently that they'd heard me say that I don't remember my dad ever working from home. And he was a research scientist and a professor. I worked for the U.S. Army for 35 years doing computer science. I never saw him work from home. And he's written books. And they were like, what? Because they're so used to me and my wife and this generation working from home. But if you go back just a little bit, it was not the norm to work the way we do now. For those of you who are maybe under 30, you probably have never seen a world that, to me, is somewhat nostalgic. The idea that, you didn't have any computing equipment at home. You certainly didn't have a phone. And when you were home, you were home. You go home and that was it. But that's changed. And an advantage of doing the 17% and now probably doing more like 117% is that something like coronavirus happens and we're ready for it. So that, I guess, in a sense, is a good thing. Now, maybe the last 5 or 6 months or so, since February, March, as I've talked to different enterprise teams and talked to folks, students like you, I've always made it a habit to kind of, during the, that intro before every meeting where you say, how's everything going? And by the way, that's one thing I'm going to miss. If you can miss anything about pandemic, I miss that we all wish each other to be safe and well. That's a beautiful thing that I hope we never lose. Like, why is it that Leaf's on the phone? He and I are good friends. Now when we talk, I'll say, Leaf, hey, make sure you stay well. And he'll say the same. We wouldn't have said that before. I'd be like, later, dude. I like saying stay safe better. But at any rate, before meetings, I always ask teams or individuals, hey, how's it going with the pandemic? And I keep a little crib sheet I categorize the response, and just at a very broad sort of categorization into positive and negative responses, where negative responses would be, oh, this is what a mess, so terrible. Well, hopefully we'll get through this. Our budget is a mess, and gee, I'm losing people. But you know that narrative, and it's not a crazy narrative. I mean, talk to some people who really work in areas that are getting nailed. I'm sure there's some people on the call right now who are in industries that are suffering terribly, and you may have family members suffering. I know I do. So I get the negative thing. It's not that's not by in any way reflective of some personality flaws. It's pretty rational. Sometimes my kids say, "Gee, Dad, I wish I'd stop worrying about this thing." And it might be something, and you say, "No, that's pretty rational." But then the other 50% is very positive. And you don't want to be too Pollyannish about this, but sometimes they'll say, "Oh, you know what? This is okay. We're trying new things. We're going to be stronger as a team. I have more time with my family. I'm being more productive." We're going to get into some of that later. But I noticed that it's 50-50. So that's just my sampling. Maybe people you talk to, it would be 80-20. And I noticed the commercial folks, like the closer you come to being in a sales position, you work for a vendor, so to speak, then you're more likely to be positive. If you work for an enterprise, we're on a team, maybe you're a CISO or a deputy or you're a direct reporter, you work in the enterprise security field, you're more likely to be negative. And if you follow me on LinkedIn, you see I wrote a cartoon for today that has Charlie going to the bookstore, and he's asking for a book. He's doing research on his CISO position, and the librarian says to him, what can I do? And he goes, "Yeah, I'm looking for a book." And he asked for a book on, trauma-induced hypernausea or something like. I made like this little joke about the fact that CISOs are feeling terrible nausea. But I tend to be more on the positive side. Like as I'm coaching my team and talking to others, I say, "Hey, here's how I think you should deal with this big event," which essentially is a virtual event. You're going to have extra time because you're not going to be commuting and you're going to be socializing less. I hope if you have the kids home, then that's great. Maybe you spend a lot of time with the children, but if you have a little extra time, why don't you take advantage of that? I posted something called the 100-Day Plan, onto social media, where I said I found 100 different things that are free. So why don't you do one of these a day for 100 days? And that was back in March. I said it would take us to early July, and here we are. So for any of you who were doing that with me, reading those papers and watching the videos, I did it. That's a pretty good little course in 100 days of cybersecurity. But I have a partner at work, Rich Powell, who's a cartoonist. We do the Charlie CISO thing together. He's a wonderful guy. Worked for Mad Magazine, has this crazy sense of humor. It's so funny. And we make a good partnership because I think up the bits and he draws them, makes them really funny. We said, "You know what? We're going to be home." He's in North Carolina. So why don't we do a book? And we hadn't done a book before. And I knew it would be a lot of work, but somehow the book just flowed out of us. It seemed like we could take the day-to-day news that we were watching and just translate it. And this book popped out, Working from Home Guide to Navigating the New Normal. Leif, I hope you don't mind. I'm sort of shamelessly, I don't know that it's a good idea that I'm promoting this darn cartoon book here, but it's relevant because we're talking about working from home. So it would seem weird that I wasn't referencing it. But this book flowed out of our hands. I'm telling you, there's no way we could have written this book any other time. It was right for us. And we were feeling it. We were living it. It poured out so quickly. I think it's freaking hilarious. Now, maybe you'd read it and think I've said a bunch of dummy stuff, but it's been a very popular book. You can see the 18 people that I paid to do a rating all said 5 stars. Just kidding. But I'll give you an example of some of the humor that popped out from just being home and just having the opportunity to make something positive. So here, Charlie Ciso is our hero, and this is his cookie manager. We draw him that way. He says can really get a lot of work done from home. And then obviously he says the key is to make sure to avoid distractions. And then we show Charlie with a fake backdrop sitting by the pool, holding his thing up with a little tree and he's dog here. So this is what you see. And that came from, we all noticed how funny it is, the backdrops that people pick. And I know Zoom lets you pick a electronic backdrop, but I think it's more fun to pick one in your house somewhere. And I bet the folks that I coach, I've been saying, if you sense that you're about to get fired, then make sure you have some little kids run behind you during your Zoom session and you probably won't get fired. Here's another, and this is like the getting back to work. So we have Charlie sitting here, he says, are you sick? No. Did you quit? No. Car break? No. And then the boss says, well, why are you home? And Charlie looks at us and says, do I have to really answer this dumb question? I mean, the feeling a lot of you are going to like, this idea of remote virtual work. And I have a feeling that what we've written here for our session today will be very meaningful to you, namely that you should develop a healthy respect for virtual work. And why do I write it this way? Because we all know the manager